Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for showing up today and listening to Briana from Healthy for Life in WA. She's had to get up early this morning. We've had a little bit of a chat already. But today we're going to be chatting about what is it again? We're going to talk about what you've done overseas. You've gone and visited a few clinics overseas, and you've
Mm,
also going to talk about some testing, tick-borne testing and so forth. I'll
mm,
be submitting some people along the way as we go along.
mhm,
So, to give a little bit of a background from Brianna, is an Australian naturopath who specialises in using natural solutions to help her patients overcome SIRS, which is mould and so forth, and tick-borne diseases. She's been in practice since 2009, and Brianna is an expert in SIRS and from what we call in Australia is overseas acquired Lyme disease, but also the Australian infections as well, like rickettsia and Q fever and methylation and preconception care. Brianna sees patients all over Australia and the USA via Zoom. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Brianna.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everybody. I know it's a big thing to commit time and show up to listen to somebody talk, so I really appreciate you being here. Do ask Peter questions too. Put them into the chat, and then Peter can let me know as we go if there's anything that you want further clarification on something I've just said. And also at the end, we might have some time for a bit more of a general Q&A too, if you need. So keep a notepad and ask questions. Please jump in.
Yeah, you want to start just chatting about where you went to, and you were overseas for quite some time, weren't you?
Mm, yeah, yeah. And so one of the things that I achieved when I was in Europe is I managed to go to 4 of the international Lyme clinics. I went to 2 clinics in Cyprus, Neomed and the Nikolenko Institute or Med Institute. I used to be called YC Med, so there are a number of different names for the same place in Nicosia, and also Paracelsus and the St. Gale Clinic in Germany. I spoke a lot to Lyme Connect as well, trying to go and see if I could get in there with Dr. Renz, but he wasn't understanding the importance of meeting with me so that I could then help my patients and other Australians through forums like this about talking about what they offer and who it might be useful for. He felt that perhaps people might steal his proprietary information, which I thought was an interesting viewpoint, given that I'm a naturopath and I cannot prescribe antibiotics or inject them to anybody anyway. So we'll start. Where do you want to start? Which clinic interests you the most, do you think?
Well, I know that a lot of people end up going to Cyprus from Australia. Uh,
Mm,
so that's got a couple of different clinics on there, haven't they? I think it started out as one
mm,
clinic years and years ago, and then I think
mm.
another one came in as competition to them, I guess. So
Yeah.
they've kind of been set up really in Cyprus as a clinic for lots of things over there as well now. I
Mhm.
mean, I think they're even doing long COVID stuff too. So, but let's stick to the tick-borne infection sort of thing. Well,
Mm.
so what did you find they do in general? Do they do the same thing over there all the time, or what sort of things do they have to offer?
Okay, so we'll start with a bit of background there. So Dr. Yuri, the Russian doctor, started in Nicosia with what was YC Med then, and now is the Nikolenko Clinic or Med Institute. Um, and then he opened a satellite, Neomed, which is on the south coast. Um, and over time, he's pulled back. Now, I think there was some political posturing as well. He's pulled back from being actively running that, but the 2 clinics do refer patients. And I know that Dr. Yuri is still on call to answer questions for what happens at Neomed. There are some big differences in each of those clinics, which I'll get into. But I want to just overview on Cyprus a little more first. So, one of the great things about Cyprus is that it's not in the Schengen zone, so Australians can get visas very simply that doesn't eat up your access to European countries as well. So, a Schengen visa for an Australian passport holder gives 180 days. Every 180 days, you get 90 days, so about 3 months. So, if you are needing recurring treatment or to go in and out of a Schengen zone, just thinking about not having more than 90 days. But at the moment, Cyprus is still not Schengen, so you can just have your 90 days just in Cyprus pretty easily without it impacting on other countries you might also want to visit. Um, Cyprus drives on the same side of the road as Australians. So if we've got brain fog and cognitive decline and you're trying to navigate a new system, having a hire car on the same side of the road when you get off a plane is simple. Cyprus is about the same price as Australia. So if we're thinking about groceries, fuel prices, they're really equivalent to what I was buying with the Australian dollar in an Australian supermarket versus what I was buying in Cyprus. So that's another benefit, I think, to the Australian population. It's a really small little island, easy to navigate, big wide freeways, simple to zip around between airports getting to these clinics as well. So I think from that perspective, it is a nice option. There's not as much of a steep learning curve, other than they speak Greek. And they don't all speak English, but they gesture wildly and they're very friendly people, I found. Um, Great organic food stores there, great access to real food, which I didn't find in a lot of European countries. So real food is low preservative. We know what the ingredients are, not full of canola and soy oils, actual vital fruits and vegetables and meats and dairy. So I think that's useful because all of these clinics, the recommended stay is 3 to 4 weeks, plus maybe a week or half a week either side as a buffer so you can overcome jet lag or process treatment or hop back in for another few extra things before you fly home. Flying into Cyprus as an Australian passport holder, there are 2 airports only that you can use. There are 3 international airports in Cyprus. One of them you cannot use as an Australian because you will be an illegal immigrant if you do. You cannot go into Nicosia Airport, even though it might seem sensible because YCMed or Nikolenko Institute is in Nicosia, but you end up in the Turkish side, which you then cannot cross the UN border into the Greek side. So make sure you fly into Larnaca or Paphos and then get a hire car and find some accommodation. Accommodation costs for an Airbnb self-catering in both of these places was much cheaper than I'd be paying in Australia. So that's another benefit versus Germany or Switzerland. Certainly in Switzerland, that's prices is an issue perhaps. So that kind of background in Cyprus, I think, makes them a good choice for an Australian patient to get there. Now, Neomed we'll start there because it's the first clinic that I went to. So Neomed is a beautiful health villa in the farmland outside Limassol. It's about a 15-minute drive. It's nice and simple. Limassol's on the coast. There's lots of Airbnbs, lots of apartments, lots of organic shops, beautiful fresh sea air out of the med. It is a nice place to go home to after your treatments and heal. It's not a busy, bustling city like Nicosia is for the Med Institute. Neomed do all kinds of great work. They're very, very aware of mold. The place is spotless and all of the staff speak great English. Everybody that I met there, and I met about 30 practitioners, has very good English. So that makes it simple for an Australian to navigate treatment there. Now, they are offering as their flagship treatment model for tick-borne diseases, they are offering ozone. So they do 10 pass, 20 pass ozone, which is taking the blood out of the body, washing it with ozone, filtering it through a mechanical filter and popping it back in. They're also doing HBOT, which is hyperbaric oxygen, PMT. They've got the PIMI, these magnets that stimulate lymphatic drainage. They do colonoscopies, not colonoscopies, colon hydrotherapy. They were doing some kind of nanobot as well. Ozone can be rectal insufflation as well as IV bags, and lots of different IVs. The consults with their naturopath, their doctor on site, their physiotherapist, I thought the pricing was very reasonable and in some cases cheaper, much, much cheaper than you'd be getting for an integrative doctor in Australia or even a naturopath in Australia. Where their pricing struck me as you could spend that money better somewhere else is their external diagnostics. So if you need SIBO testing or heavy metal testing or a comprehensive stool analysis or a Dutch hormone profile, if you're needing those things, get them through your naturopath in Australia. It will save you a lot of money. Now, they were thinking that for a Lyme tick-borne disease panel, about 4 weeks is right, with possibly an extended 5th week, and they do 5-hour days. They will come and pick you up from your hotel in Limassol, and they do have some recommendations about places. But if you are a highly chemically sensitive or a highly mold sensitive person, they were unwilling to make recommendations because it's a place that might have been mold free 3 months ago. You have a guest that leaves wet towels on the bed. It's no longer a mold free, safe environment. So if you're a highly sensitive person that needs to be very aware of your exposures, maybe traveling with a portable air purifier, not using the pillows, bring your own perhaps. I don't know. There's probably ways you can reduce your exposure. But from that perspective, maybe don't book an Airbnb for the whole time. Maybe just get a couple of days and see, do you react to this one? A couple more, react to this one. And then if you find a safe one, go with it. One of the things that I really liked about Neomed, yes, they speak great English. Yes, it's a beautiful environment to heal in. Yes, it's very low stress. Um, Most of their patients did not need a supplementary support person to go with them. So if we're thinking about pricing and saving money, not having to pay extra airfares, extra accommodation, that could be valuable. They found that most of their patients didn't crash or herx through treatment to the point they needed somebody else. So that could be of value as well. They don't offer any antibiotics. So if you know that you're somebody that really wants IV antibiotics, that's not the clinic for you. Any questions about what they're offering or has anybody got any questions at this point?
You're welcome to unmute and just ask your question or put it in the chat and I can ask it for you. Very interesting what you're covering, because it's a lot of times when you go searching online, you won't get this information. It's only someone who's been there and experienced it themselves. I mean, you didn't have to experience all of the treatments, obviously,
Mm.
but having an oversight of all of the people who went. And I found that reading lots of things online for a number of years, people who have gone to clinics like that, and Cyprus is very popular, that there is a number of people who do go with a support person because
Mhm.
they're in wheelchairs. They really are incapacitated,
Mhm.
but they return without the wheelchairs.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's about a 30 people come back, you know, in remission. And
Mhm.
there's another 30 that seems to get a lot better, and then they start to relapse a little bit, and a
Mhm.
30% kind of notice not that great. So it
Mhm.
depends, I guess, on, would you say, on how sick and originally the person is, or whether the particular treatments perhaps that they chose were not the most beneficial for them, or may not have been long enough, perhaps in some cases. So I know some only were able to afford a month,
Mhm.
um, and a month may not have been long enough to do the full treatments. Is that something?
Yeah. So it would be long enough to do the treatments that they're offering. So a standard day, they'll pick you up in their minivan, bring you in, I think it's 8, 9 in the morning. Um, Standard days with them, I think there were IVs and then Tempass and then either some sort of HBOT or the Papimi in the afternoons or the infrared saunas, colon hydrotherapy. I don't know why I keep using the wrong word there. Um, so it seemed to be support the body, put the ozone in, and the ozone sessions are 5 days a week for the 4 weeks that you're there. I don't know what other therapies they could possibly offer there that they're not going to offer you in the 4 weeks if you're going for a Lyme treatment or a long COVID. They were seeing a lot of long COVID and they were seeing a lot of post vaccine problems as well
Yep.
with COVID vaccines. Um, when I was there, they did offer me the Papimi. They're these kind of magnet pulsy thing. It wasn't unpleasant to receive. It was
That's
really,
is that on the
it was fun.
brain?
No, it was on the body, and she
Okay.
could it was like a little thumping thing, and she could tell by the way that it hurt what organs or places in my body, based on where she put it, um, might be needing further care, which then she would feed that back to maybe the IV therapist, and they would choose different IV combinations to support drainage or nutrients or whatever it might be, as well as some of the other more supportive therapies.
So is that kind
Um,
of a lymph treatment, perhaps?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lymphatic treatment for Penny. Both of the Cyprus clinics offer that, and I think it might have been St. Georg that did as well. But I'll check my notes as we go forward. Neomed didn't keep any information on their success rates and their relapse rates. There's no sort of follow up with patients to see who got well.
Mhm.
And from a financial perspective, I think they classed people who returned to them as being successful patients with the viewpoint that if you get so well, you want to come back and get more well. They're doing well in treating you. And I thought perhaps more follow up data collection would be of value to understand who should go and what your results could expect. I did speak to a number of patients when I was there and also at Nikolenko. Um, and there is a number of them that did get progressively better with further treatments. And so that might be a little bit more accessible for a European patient or a British patient. They can just duck over and spend a couple of weeks and have more ozone and duck home again. Whereas the Australian patient, it's just a 30-hour flight. It is more time, more money. Um, so for us, we really want to spend that money wisely. I think if we're going to commit to getting there, with brain fog and chronic illness and pain and fatigue and nausea and all the things that this population is suffering with, we really want it to be successful. We can't just pop back next weekend for a bit more.
No, it's a long travel across, and even the travel itself would be detrimental
It'd
for
be
you as well.
fatiguing for people.
And sometimes why people need a support person, even just for the flight.
Working out where you're walking. Sometimes we transited through a number of different places and different legs, but one of the routes would have been transiting through Istanbul. Um, the airport alone is 2 or 3 kilometres long. If you're walking from one gate, that's a thing to navigate with chronic diseases.
Yeah, and they may not have been set up like a lot of the airports in Australia where they've got that sunflower thing where, people know that you've got chronic illness and they get a wheelchair for you, et cetera, et cetera. There is a
Mm.
question in the chat.
Mm.
Someone's always wondering how they can handle the intensity and frequency of the treatments. What do they do to detox, and how do patients feel during a treatment? And you mentioned most people are okay, but
Mm.
there has been stories online where people are not okay. I mean, they really
Yes,
do hurts. So
yes.
you address that.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what Neomed does very well by managing the hercs with the PEMI, the nanobot machine, the HBOTs, the infrared saunas. Everybody does a liver and gallbladder flush in the first week as well. Regardless, they don't do an ultrasound first to check for gallstones. Everybody just does one. And then the IV nutrients to offset oxidation. They are managing your hercs in house, but some people flee. And I'll talk about the 10 pass ozone process and what I experienced when I had one of those when we talk about the Nikolenko clinic, because that's where I did do it. Is there any more questions about Neomed before we move on?
Anyone? Nothing in the chat. We're all quiet out there. I think they're
Okay.
just absorbing what you're saying.
Yeah, great. Okay. So when you're staying at Neomed, it makes sense to stay in Limassol, which is the capital, just close to them. It is a city in the way that kind of the Gold Coast is a bit of a city. It's sort of high rises on a bit of a beach strip. Um, it's not a quaint, antiquated, charming cobblestones kind of village. It's quite a modern place, but I didn't have any trouble driving there at all. The roads or the road rules weren't strange. It was easy to navigate the 15 minutes from Limassol to the Neomed clinic.
Another question's come up. Question about Neomed for option for kids. Do many kids?
Yes, to ask them that because that was my interest as well. I think they said not younger than 14. I think she said they did take one 12-year-old because they had seen his family members previously, and the family knew what they were getting into and believed that their child could go.
Okay. Is it a matter of handling the treatment? Is it like even in Australia when you get scans done and treatments done here? I mean, there's an element of trauma about a lot of these treatments as well. Is
Mhm,
that something to consider as well, to have this expectation that, I guess, like chemotherapy in a lot of respects too, there's trauma involved with that too, that you in
mhm,
some respects got to be mentally prepared for this. Is there anything that helps people who might be freaking out from these treatments? Like, I think you're going to explain what ozone therapy is, and some people might not know what that is, and also HBOT, hyperbaric
mhm,
oxygen therapy too.
mhm. Mhm.
And you're talking about a lot of these things, they're not really specific for killing a bacteria per se, are they? They're really a holistic treatment, that no matter what you've got going on, whether it is mold or mycotoxins or any other unknown pathogens or even parasites, can
Mhm.
address the whole thing by these treatments. Do you want to sort of talk a bit more about that as well as you go along?
Yeah, yeah, there are a number of questions there.
Sorry.
Uh, um, they in Cyprus, they are using ozone as their antimicrobial to clean the blood and to oxygenate the blood and to get infections killed by exposing them to the ozone. So as the ozone washes in and out of the body. So in Australia, we can only do a bag of IV ozone put into the body, and I think in the ozone clinic in Sydney, we can do ozone can come out of the body twice, get washed, put back in, put the blood back in twice. Whereas in Cyprus, they can do 10 times out of the body or 20 times out of the body, washing the blood. And it's only a little bit of blood that comes out and gets washed and reinserted. It's not, um, the whole of it's not a full dialysis or anything. Um, and then they're using the supportive therapy. So the understanding that if we can get the toxin load down, the cells functioning better and waste are coming out, the body can heal itself to some degree, which is why they've got the IVs, the supportive therapies, the improvement in getting drainage happening as well, and then the killing with the ozone.
Okay. So the ozone, yeah, as you said, is done in Australia now. There's a couple of clinics in Sydney. I
Mm.
think the same one's opening
One
up
in
in
Cyprus.
Adelaide.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not one open up in Melbourne that's as public as that anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a slight turning the corner, perhaps, that we're having some of these treatments in Australia. We'll see. Um,
The pricing structure is very, very different. So let me just have a look at the Neomed. So your IV 10 pass ozone at Neomed, and it was the same at Nikolenko, €180. So what's that? About 200, about $300.
yeah, double it.
Um,
Is that for the whole week or just for one day? One day,
one.
one treatment.
So we're looking at about 40 grand in
Okay.
Cyprus for the month, plus your accommodation, plus your food, plus your flights, plus your support person if you need one.
50 to 60, something like that, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I did like Cyprus in that the grocery money I was spending here is the same money I was spending there. I didn't have to double it
Yeah.
like I did in the UK or Scotland or Northern Ireland, or triple it, four times it in Switzerland. My money was buying the same with the exchange rate. So if 10 pass ozone is 180 in Cyprus, 2 pass ozone in Sydney is 750.
Wow.
And they'll do it once every 3 or 4 weeks, once every 6 weeks. They won't do it at the same frequency, the every day.
Yeah.
So when I was speaking to people about their experience of having the 10 pass ozone, a lot of them were saying the first week was the hardest. And that after that, it became easy. So if we're talking about childhood trauma, going back to that part of the question, I don't think popping them in a hyperbaric is traumatic. They're just in there listening to an audiobook or reading or watching something on a screen. I don't think having the red light therapy or the physio, the papini, the magnets, I think that's all fine. Colon therapy for a child, I wouldn't want to be passing their bodily autonomy. I think they need further brain development to understand the impact of why we might be putting something into their colon. It's not comfortable to have colon hydrotherapy when you're having it. There's bloating, there's cramping. It's painful to hold that volume of water. You have to have a certain fortitude to do it, and the number of needles required to have
Yeah.
IV nutrients, to have IV ozone. I don't know many children who have the mental fortitude to take that pathway. Um, yeah, my
It's kind of,
9-year-old is nowhere near capable of that, but my 12-year-old may be.
yeah.
Um,
It's kind of relating to a chemotherapy kind of process, really, isn't it? No, it's
daily
bacterial
needles for a
chemotherapy.
kid, yeah, daily needles for a kid is a big thing for 4 weeks.
Mm.
Um, and the ozone hurts. It really hurts at the injection site. One of the girls I was speaking to in the room that I was having it done at the Med Institute in Nicosia, she was saying it was the first time, and she'd been there 3 different sessions for 3 different months and getting progressively better and holding better each time. She's back working full time. She's on a computer the whole time, working remotely, and her mum was there as her support person. Her mum spoke fluent Greek and fluent English. She's amazing. She said the first time it was so painful, so hot, so stingy that she wanted to cut her arm off.
Oh, wow.
It was so bad. For me, it was uncomfortable but bearable if I didn't put my mind on it. It was certainly painful. It was painful and stingy and burny at the site. I also have a needle phobia and a blood problem. Seeing blood is a problem for me. So I had to very carefully not look at the other chairs and the other people's blood, because I went whoop, white. And they had to bring me very sweet lemon drink, Greek lemon juice drink stuff full of sugar. And I was like, more cold lemon, please, with sugar, to come back up. Doing it every day for a month, I think I would be traumatized from that. I'm a strong enough person to overcome that with the benefits, but it is something to consider. And maybe I'm just thinking about how would we prep for those sorts of experiences. For me, I was able to utilize the pain reduction techniques I have learnt in hypnobirthing my children, that I home birthed both of my kids without meds. And I learnt some techniques about turning the pain dial down. So maybe I use natal hypnotherapy. They're a British place. They're really cheap. They're still really affordable. Maybe something like that for learning how to deal with pain would be of value going
Yeah.
into it.
You're talking a lot about almost having a pre-preparation to be able to go to a place like that, or to be better prepared for a place like this. I don't know where we've got anything like that. If people are going to head overseas, whether there is a place they can come to. I mean, they do have online Facebook groups, Neomed and the other place as well, and you
Mm-hmm.
can ask questions, etc. there, and you can learn a lot there. So if you are planning to go, that's probably one of the best places to jump on and listen to what the patient's experiences have been as well. But you're
Mm.
sort of really outlining a lot. So you actually did experience these things now.
Mm-hmm.
Was there, did you experience them just to experience them? You did. Geez,
Yeah.
you're a sucker for punishment, aren't you? So you didn't
Yeah.
need to do this. But
No.
did you feel better from it afterwards
I
for
did.
some
I
reason?
had the 10 pass for the one day, because I was only in Cyprus for 5. And 2 of them were a weekend. I did feel better. So on the drive home, I was certainly able to drive home after 10 past ozone. There was no hesitation that it would be unsafe. And I had buffered a few hours to be like, okay, well, we might just need to find a nice park and have a smoothie,
Yeah.
and regroup. Um, I felt, and I did record an Instagram video that I can go back to my Instagram and pin to the top, so you guys can have a look and see what I was experiencing that day. I felt more vibrant, more alive, not like a coffee wakefulness or a stimulant wakefulness, just more there.
Yeah.
The next week, my skin looked amazing. It just was bright. It was light. My eyes were really white. Um, I just felt slightly better. And I
Yeah.
don't feel bad anytime. So, but it was just more. And I thought, oh, that really would compound in a very interesting way
So yeah,
over 20 sessions of that.
yeah. So the cells are starting to wake up again. It's a couple of
Mm,
questions.
mm.
Um, yeah, if you've got very small veins, and there's a lot of people who do have issues with that,
Yeah.
the ozone, you might not be a good candidate for it. It'll be a little bit more difficult to do.
Yeah. I think there is a possibility of a PIC line,
Okay, so do
having a
they
port.
do pick lines there for those cases? Or they probably
Um,
prefer not to go down that pathway. That's
yeah, they can set them, I think, and they prefer not to, but they can.
Yep. Okay, so that is an alternative.
Yeah.
Um, somebody else has said they've had ozone done here and they had absolutely no pain during ozone
Yeah,
treatment.
fantastic.
They had 10 ozone treatments. Um,
And was that ozone in an IV bag, just a drip going in?
I
Because
think
that would
so,
just,
because it
yeah,
was in
it's when
Sydney.
they're pulling it out and putting it back in, because
Yeah,
they're washing it back in through the same
yeah, they got
place.
big, said the person said, I'm lucky I've got big veins.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. But I know the person, and they've also said that they did feel quite crook for a while afterwards, but then recovered quite well.
yes. And so I think that's really what I want to make clear What can we do in Australia that these overseas Lyme clinics are doing at great expense? So I want to, at the end, wrap that in and say, okay, well, these guys are all doing the liver flushes. And you do one at home.
Yeah.
There's a whole handout on my website. Just Google Briana Gunn liver and gallbladder flush. I've got the protocol there. Just download it, print it, stick it on your fridge. Um, some of them are using the ionic foot spas. They're cheap. Buy one, use one. They're all using infrared saunas.
Yeah.
My patients, the cheap ones work fine. The
Yeah.
pop-up infrared, the portable low EMF infrared saunas from China, they make people sweat. They make people feel better. You don't need to spend 20 grand or 6 grand on a Swedish box. $500 is enough.
Yeah.
IV
Also, the new
nutrients. We can get
blankets.
IV nutrients. That's right. IV nutrients. We can get that here. What can we do here to maximize your success? So, what are the factors that the overseas clinics are doing that the Australian clinics are not doing? Aftercare. The big gap that I see in the Australian offerings is that they are not doing aftercare. So they're just doing the ozone and off you go again, or Xenon or whatever it might be. Where's the IV nutrients? Where's the colon hydrotherapy? Where's the infrared saunas? Where's the HBOT? And HBOT places, that's hyperbaric, getting your body down to being more, pushing more oxygen into your body, into your cells. The research on that is that we need 20 plus, 30 plus of these sessions. But you can get them in Australia. And often they have deals. You buy 20 for the price of something and you save a huge amount. And then you can go 3 times a week to get that compounding benefit. So have a look at things in your local area. How can you hack the overseas treatments locally with more success and cheaper?
Yeah. And sadly, it's not in one place, but if it's local to you, you can go. I know in Melbourne there are places that I've done before, and once a week I go. Even float therapy with
Mm-hmm.
magnesium floats are quite helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, these sauna blankets have come down in price a lot as
Yep.
well. You can do that too. You can do the cold therapy if you're capable of doing it. The other benefit is, I guess, if you have it yourself, you can have it to your own timeline as well, and your own. So you can, if you can do something one day, have a rest day, and then do something the next day if you need a rest day. Because that was
Yep.
another thing. It's pretty intensive, isn't it? When you go there, you do want to get your money's worth and do as much as you can. But could you be sometimes overdoing it and your body's just not fully coping?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what people
There
expect.
seems to be flexibility in all of the clinics,
Okay.
particularly in Cyprus, that if you needed a rest day, you had a rest day, and they just do the IV nutrients, they just do supporting therapies, the PME, other things, or just don't go in.
So
And
recovery.
they will give you those extra days and stretch your 4 weeks out over 5.
Yeah. And I guess you also got nursing staff there. So if something does happen, you've got that security behind you as well with having the
Yeah,
clinic, understanding. They've also got the experience. They've probably come across an issue before and been able to address it quite safely as well, which is nice.
yeah.
So that's so that's the 2 clinics in.
No, that's just Neomed. So we'll get into Nikolenko Clinic is in the capital city, which is Nicosia. It's a bustling city. It's a bit grimy. It's a bit Western Bloc in places, and other places it's charming and gorgeous, and markets and real food. The Greek Cypriots eat real food, lots of fresh, vibrant whole foods, lots of olive oil and salads.
Mediterranean kind of diet.
Beautiful. That's right. They're really still eating that, and it's available everywhere. So you fly into Larnaca or Paphos, and I've butchered the word Larnaca. It's a really lovely sounding Greek word. I just don't have it. I'm sorry. And then if you were to fly into Larnaca, that's about 50 k's up a nice straight highway to Nicosia, which is in kind of in central Cyprus. To be fair, you can either stay in Nicosia, which is just a city, and you'd have a standard hotel experience, or if you're well enough or have a support person who can do that 50k drive each direction each day. A number of the people I met there were staying in Larnaca. It's a coastal seaside town. It's, I think, a healing experience there. See you, Britt. We'll catch the replay. And so then you can go and still have a bit more of a holiday place where you're low in stress, high in sunshine, ionizing at the beach and recovery on the weekends, having an experience that nourishes you while you're healing versus just being in a hotel in a city. How do we maximize and stack your experience to benefit your health? So I would consider staying there, or maybe staying in Nicosia near the clinic for the first 2 weeks and then 2 weeks maybe at the coast. I don't know, whatever. These are just my thoughts. Um, Nikolenko Clinic, they speak Greek really fast. It's hectic. It's an inner city building. It's 3 layers, I think. Dr. Yuri has. Dr. Yuri is vibrant, bustling. He is multitasking. I have never met a man who is holding 5 conversations at once. I sat with him the entire day. He just said, come in, sit in all of my appointments. Let me personally take you to all of my clinics. I want to teach you who these people are and show you these therapists. I sat in, his door is open nonstop. People are like in and out, 5 minutes. They bring in their little blue book and he just stamps, writes a note, tells them, off you go to the physio now. That person stamps. It's a system. So if you cannot take chaos because your nervous system is so dysregulated, it's going to be a challenge there. It's an older building. It's still really clean. It's still a therapeutic environment, absolutely, but it's a bustling hospital. So if you were particularly, I didn't have any sense of mold or a musty smell there, but it is an older building. So if you're more sensitive to those things, that could be a factor for you guys. The difference here, they do all the same stuff at the same prices as Neomed. They do IV antibiotics. So if you need IV antibiotics as well as the Tempass ozone, as well as the colon therapy, as well as the IV nutrients, as well as the lasers, they focus a little bit more on the red light lasers as well into the bloodstream. Again, cleaning the body and getting the healing resources back so the immune system can fight and the blood cells can move cleanly and carry lymphatic waste away. They will recheck your antibodies after treatment as well. So if you go in with a Lyme test, they will, or a tick-borne disease test, they will check and see if the antibodies are coming down.
Sorry, do they do the testing there before for the tick-borne infections, or do you take your testing results from Australia to them?
Either.
Okay.
Either. They will
So,
order them there,
so,
or you can bring yours.
so if they find you've got active antibodies, would they more likely to suggest to you to do antibiotics as well as the other treatments, or give you the choice yourself?
I got the impression it would be both. If you were pushing for them, Dr. Yuri would give you what you asked for, and he is very, very experienced
Yeah.
at chronic illness. And if I had sort of a level 7 or under chronic illness, I think Neomed's going to do a great job. If I had particularly difficult wheelchair bound, I might be considering that expertise of Dr. Yuri himself and the IV antibiotics or antiparasitics, whatever it might be that's required, to be of value.
It's worthwhile to know that. Yeah.
Other than that, it's chaotic and noisy, and I know my sensory patients could not cope.
Yeah.
And they speak Greek and fast, and Dr. Yuri speaks Russian and Greek
Yes.
and broken English fast.
Yeah.
You might need to find somebody who is a Greek advocate who can go and translate for you, at least in the first week when you're navigating what you're doing with your blue book and who you're taking it to. Which level, which room, which therapist, what now?
That's interesting. Do you know if they have a Greek interpreter or advocate there that on offer?
No, I thought that was a bit of a gap. They do have some reasonably well English speaking reception people, but they're in a busy hospital reception. They've got 20 people standing at the desk.
Yeah, okay.
And the phone's ringing. Are they going to have time to get up and walk you to level 3, room 6, knock on the door, see that lady? I'm not sure. So I thought there would be benefit in trying to find a patient advocate, even for the first week, to help you navigate. You could get by if you've got a reasonable cognitive function, but I know that often we don't. That's why we're going to these places.
It could be a little business for somebody over there, couldn't it?
Yeah, perhaps. They will help you find Airbnbs close as well. What I did find in my travels is I downloaded a shop back app, and then I did all of my hotel bookings on either Expedia, Booking.com, or Agoda, whoever had the biggest cashback that day. And then I got a few $100s in 3 months' time, was kind of landing in my account because every booking you make for your hotels, they're giving you between 5 and 11% cash back.
Okay.
And it was just a little bit of money saved.
Yeah.
You know, it's money I was paying exactly the same rate if I booked on Booking.com versus through the Shopback app, but I saved that money and it came as actual dollars into my bank account. So just, book through Shopback.
And so that's an app on your
Just an
phone
app from the App
that you
Store,
get when you're overseas. You'd have to
No,
put
I
it
get
on.
it in Australia.
Okay.
You can get, I think, Coles, and there's all kinds of Australian shops that
Hmm,
give you cash back. I don't use it for that. I just used it when I was overseas for booking accommodation, and it was nice to have that extra money.
good tip.
Yeah, you know. Dr. Yuri Nikolenko is doing thermography there as well, and also some sort of lymphatic drainage machine called an iCoon. And they were the differences between Nikolenko and, or the Med Institute, and Neomed down on the coast.
So that's Cyprus. If people got any questions about I think most people who are in this sort of field would know the therapies themselves, ozone,
Mm.
hyperbaric oxygen, and so forth. Coming back,
And that stuff is all on Dr. Yuri's website really clearly. If you
yeah,
go to, I think it's Nikolenko Institute, got lots of videos that explain what is ozone, what is HBOT. Use your time to do that.
yeah, I'll put some notes on Facebook as well about some of these links that we've talked about as well. That it might help
Mm.
people. So we've done Cyprus, and then have we done that? And you offer
Mm.
2 other clinics now, haven't you?
Yes, yes. I went to
Okay,
Switzerland and to Germany.
Switzerland, Germany.
And
Where do
so
you want
there's
to go?
two, well, there's two clinics in Switzerland. So there's Paracelsus, which is one of the original biomedicine clinics, started by Dr. Rao, but no longer run by him. And there's also Dr. Renz's clinic. So Dr. Renz does the insulin potentiated antibiotics. And I will just start there, even though I didn't go and see his clinic because it's in a little country town and they were really not wanting to have a visitor. When I spoke to Nadine, um, who is kind of the gatekeeper for working out if you go to Dr. Renz, they also now have a clinic in Mexico that just opened. He's seeing pretty amazing results in really dropping the insulin levels down in the body to a very, very low place, much lower than other doctors are comfortable going. And then pumping IV antibiotics, antiparasitics, antifungals, antivirals in when the cells are starving for sugar. And they, in that state, they suck in the antibiotics in a way that they do not without the insulin. It's $5 US a week, 5 grand US. So what's that? 8,000 a week. It's in Switzerland, and Switzerland is staggeringly expensive for the Australian dollar. So, an example, in Italy, which we just come from, €14 would buy you chicken, pasta, vegetable salad, a standard kind of restaurant meal. Across the border in Switzerland, €35. So now we're closer to 60 something dollars for the same meal that's just chicken pasta. And
Yeah.
it's not fancy, it's not restaurant food. So just factoring in the cost of Switzerland, but that insulin potentiated or potentialized treatment is something to consider. Nadine was saying it's about 50% of people will be 80% better within the week,
Oh,
and the other 50% will have no change.
ah,
Which one is you?
yeah, yeah. It's a bit,
And yeah, so she's probably got more experience now of picking who's going to respond, who's not. Talk to her. She's a wealth of knowledge. Put it on the radar at least.
so is that something
Um,
tied up with glycolysis with yourself? Am I saying the right thing? Not being a doctor,
Glycolysis.
you're a
Yeah.
practitioner. So you having high insulin to begin with is going to be a reason to get the insulin down over there as well. But if you don't have high insulin, maybe is that reason why it's not working as well?
I'm not sure that that was the factors in it. I mean,
Okay.
yes, if you had insulin resistance and you're not going to respond to that insulin when it goes into the cells, that would be a factor. Absolutely. I think it was still a month. I didn't make good notes because I spoke to her on the phone.
If somebody
It
has
might only,
how
it
long
might
is the
only have,
treatment?
yeah, it might only have been 2 weeks there.
Okay. So
And
if you said that most people got better within the week, they might have only done
mm,
another week of mop up kind of stuff or get
yeah,
extra improvement.
yeah.
Or
I
if they
wasn't
notice
aware of
nothing.
them doing any supportive treatment. I wasn't aware of them doing any IVs or
Okay.
infrareds or anything to help you heal, or any of the mitochondria, mitobox that St. George's Georg is doing. Um, no, I attended them as a practitioner, as a colleague to go and explore and understand and learn and visit. I didn't go and have inpatient care at any of them, other than the things I've just spoken about in Cyprus.
So it sounds like a one treatment place because then something that they might have even perhaps patented or focused on or something like that.
Yes, and that's what they're doing at their Mexico clinic is much more holistic. It's all of the things
Yeah.
that the other clinics are doing. So it might be worth, because I'm pretty sure that is open now, it might be worth just calling. It's Lyme Connect is who you'd connect to Nadine through, and just seeing, is the Mexican centres better?
Yeah.
Um,
'Cause becoming more popular is Lyme, Mexico
yeah,
as well,
yeah.
which sounds more like Cyprus in a lot of respects.
Yes, and they're making them all inclusive, all in one, with either hotel rooms included or separate,
Yeah.
depending on what your needs are. So I think with all the clinics in Switzerland, you fly into Zurich, and then they're driving on the other side of the road, and it's Switzerland prices. So Paracelsus then is in Lustmühle, which is just outside St. Gallen. It's an hour and a half from Zurich. I didn't come that direction. I came through the Alps from Italy, and I drove. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this clinic because the pricing is 3 times more than the others. And when you go to the incredible building in the Swiss countryside and you see the marble lined absolutely everything, you can see where the money is going.
Mm.
And I thought, I want people to get better, folks. I don't know that I need marble everything, 100% pristine, Swiss quality hospital facility. So I'm going to focus on the different things that they're doing. They're doing the platelet rich, the PRP, which I thought was interesting. These guys are doing the apheresis, the plasma apheresis. So if you would have a high heavy metal load and the heavy metals are still in your blood, a manual filter for cleaning your blood or cleaning parasites out or cleaning, that could be of value. They're also doing the colon hydrotherapy in Diva machines, which you can get in Perth at the Tyra Centre. They're doing some Iridotherm heat detox, ozone infusions, but not 10 pass. Doing oligoscan, you can get that anywhere in the world these days. It's a heavy metal testing. I think these guys started at this kind of inpatient hospital or outpatient hospital, sorry, there's no facilities and rooms there. You just come in as a day patient. The apheresis was useful and the PRP was useful. And these guys do dental bioidentical implants. They're really leading in the dental. If you've got a lot of cavitations or previous mouth trouble, Paracelsus is leading there. They're all vegetarian and vegan at their cafe, which is on site. The menu didn't look outstanding to me. Maybe an Airbnb close by where you can cook yourself at the supermarkets has value. Any questions on Paracelsus? The price for me, I thought we can get a lot more bang for your buck somewhere else. So
Yeah.
if price is unlimited, Paracelsus is beautiful. It's mold free. It's a very calm, still healing environment. If you've got the cash to spend and you need those things because you're sensory overload or you've got mold stuff, keep it on your radar. But
Yeah.
without the 10 pass ozone, they don't do any antibiotics. To
Yeah.
me, they weren't doing stuff that could justify the extra expense.
Well, I guess apart from the apheresis, which is coming up a lot in the long COVID world as well, with the microclotting issues from
Yeah, clean the blood.
that. So they might have, I've read quite a bit, and maybe that's the clinic that people are going to have their apheresis done. I mean, apheresis is done in Australia for cancer, but it's not done outside of that sort of
Yeah.
realm.
How do
So,
we access it? Yeah.
yeah, how do
And
we
if we're
access it?
just cleaning these clotty, dirty blood cells, that'll be one factor. But when we've got the RNA inside the epithelial cells, causing more inflammation inside the new red blood cells, the baby ones, are the next generation just going to be dirty and clotty and explode themselves as well? How do we stop that RNA damage?
Yeah, yeah, after COVID. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from what you're talking about for all of these things, Australia has the capabilities of putting every one of those things in and also into clinics in at least each of the biggest states. And, let's face it, it could become federally funded, even if it's just a Medicare rebate. We
Absolutely.
certainly
There's
could
no
get
reason.
insurance.
There is no reason not to.
Yeah,
If we can get good success with CFS ME patients, with long COVID patients, with the diseases that we officially recognise in Australia, we've got people back in the workforce. We've got people with a quality of life,
yeah,
paying taxes again. There is no reason not to fund this stuff. It
yeah.
is infuriating.
I think the issue, though, that so many want a double-blind placebo-controlled study to prove this and then replicate it again before we end up with this.
Anybody seen the difficulties in studies recently in the way that there's not very many actual blind placebo, genuine saline placebo studies occurring anywhere in the world in pharmacy anymore?
And a lot of these would be pretty hard to replicate and to get a placebo control. I mean, who's going to have a fake hyperbaric oxygen or a fake ozone therapy or anything like this? All we can do is a clinical study of efficiency and determine how many people, even if it's 60 or 70% of people who do benefit, that's 60 or 70% people. Yeah, it's better than nothing at all. So
Mm.
let's move on because it's almost
Mm.
9 your
Yeah.
time. Let's move on
Yeah.
to Germany because Germany was a
Yeah.
that a lot of people were going to early days with
Yes. Yeah. I think this is the start of the Lyme clinics and
yeah,
the
that was St
tick-borne
George,
diseases.
was it?
Yeah. Yeah. St. Georg. And so Germany acknowledges acute and chronic Lyme. So does Austria just across the border. If you have a tick bite, you can just go to your hospital and they will do a spinal tap and see, what have we got? We got Lyme here. They're not just relying on blood tests. They will put you in hospital and give you IV antibiotics for 4 or 6 weeks until you recover and can walk out. So these are places that are acknowledging that tick-borne diseases cause harm and they can cause chronic harm as well as acute harm. When I was in Austria for only 2 weeks, I met two people who had been medically treated and had full remission after a tick bite for a classic Lyme infection. Now, St. Georg is in a really cute little town called Bad Aibling. It's very Austrian. It's down the bottom of Germany. It's about an hour from Munich. So your transfer is 105 euros in a private driver will take you from Munich airport and drop you at, at St. Georg, which if you've just been on a 30-hour flight, driver with a sign, there is a lot about
Yeah.
just taking you somewhere. Rather than having to hire cars or get accommodation in that city and drive tomorrow, whatever the problems might be. This is the only clinic I went to that has inpatient care. You can stay in their hospital. It's 3 or 4 stories in a very sweet, very charming little southern German town. Great architecture, lots of organic shops, cute cafes, cute markets and galleries and clothing shops. So if you were bringing a support person and if you're doing hypothermia, you need a support person. That person has stuff to do in the day while you're having treatments. So that's a valuable thing here. It's a charming old building.
Sorry.
The inpatient room, €112 a night. Sorry, 112 Australian dollars a night, 68 euro, including room and board and a bathroom. So it's just a little room, 2 twin beds and a bathroom in house. You would not be finding food and accommodation in a private Airbnb or hotel for 68.50. The price, I'm surprised it's still that, and they might have to put it up because you would not be able to feed yourself in Germany for that price and have a room as well. The restaurant's 3 meals a day downstairs. This is a charming old building. So when I'm saying old building, you've got the potential for mustiness in different places of it, and mustiness could be a problem for some of you. Lyme package is 2 weeks and it's 30 Australian dollars, and it gives you 2 of their hyperthermia treatments as well as a whole range of other IVs, detox, colon therapies. They're doing foot spas, apheresis, lymphatic drainage massages, magnet field therapy. They're also doing the mito box, which opens up the mitochondria to make more energy. And that was a unique thing that these guys are doing. It's 2 electrodes on your ankles and wrists, I think. You sit there and it happens. There's a patient advocate on site here that will help you if you need the emotional support or the practical support. He spoke great English, the guy that I met. After you do the Lyme package with the hypothermia, that's 2 of those sessions, 1 per week. You would also need a recovery package, which is another 11,000 Australian dollars. So we're at 40 plus flights and stuff here for 3 weeks of treatment. They send you out with a supplement box. It's not customized to you. They're just a general gift box. You pay for that. It's it's 1,100 euro. Everything in that box I could get you at Australian bracky quality stuff for half that price, and it would be customized to you, not a general box. So if you could negotiate to take off the supplement box, that's nearly 2 grand in savings just there. These guys are doing the ionic foot spas for people. Use that, hack that system, buy one and have it in your house. They specialize in Lyme and tick-borne stuff, different kinds of cancer, long COVID and post-vax injuries. The diet, I've got a few of these diet handout things that they're having for the in-house restaurant. It's just standard German food, chicken schnitzels and salad. It's great. It's fine. Whatever. Um, if you could just go on your own and be in that in-house place, fantastic. Now, the hypothermia. This is the treatment that they do that they're world renowned for. There's 4 beds in the room. You would go in twice. You're in there for 8 hours between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and they zip you into a yellow swag, and you're in there. You've got tubes coming out. You definitely need a support person. The next day is going to be hard. That day is going to be hard. There are patients who go and don't have a patient support person, and the advocate helps them. There's nursing staff on site. There are doctors on site. They also run a medical clinic for the local town. So it's like a GP clinic on one of the floors. There are good, well-trained, German-trained doctors there on site who are watching you the whole time you're in the hypothermia. When I was in there was only one person in that room having the hypothermia, and there was 3 staff monitoring them. There was a nurse, a specialist doctor, and somebody else, might have been 2 nurses. They recommend IVs before breakfast, and then you do your treatment days based on what is in your plan that you've paid for, and they can break down that plan of what you're paying for and send you an email. But they say that costs you another €100. So I guess you're just trusting them. I think call them, speak to them. They speak great English. You'll get understanding about what you're going to get in your Lyme plan and what's in the recovery package as well. They've given me handouts, but they're not comprehensive. I've had a number of patients see great things with the hypothermia over the years. I've got a skewed perspective on it because if a patient finds me after hypothermia, it's because they regressed. It's because they had good improvement and now they need more. And so that's where they're coming to me. If they just get well and they stay well and they go on with their lives, I don't meet them. So I assume that there are those people. St. Georg keep fantastic records of who gets well. They didn't want to release them to me, but they do actually keep these records. So I felt reassured in that. They're the only clinic that did.
Yeah, again, with patients' feedback online, because actually there's a meme or graphic going around that there's a photograph that they've got on their wall, which has got Australian people on it, and there's like hundreds.
Oh, yeah, I've got a video of it. Yeah.
They're little
Picture there
pins.
as well. Yeah.
And it's about a 30-30-30. 30% completely recovered just from one, 30% kind of recovered, then regressed, and 30% don't at all. Hypothermia is done in a research state in Melbourne through NIM clinics, but they're not allowed to go to the high temperature that they do. Can you explain a little bit more? I don't know whether you did, but the temperature they went to, and do they put you under anesthesia a little bit as well with that?
Absolutely. You're completely out of it. You are
Okay.
not just in there watching the walls for 8 hours. You are. Mhm.
Yeah, they'd
Yeah.
have to
Oh,
do
that
that.
would have been the other person in the room. Would have been an anaesthetist.
Yeah.
41.5 to 41.9 is the temp range to keep you in.
Yeah, I think in
And
Australia it's
then
below 41.
they bring you up slowly, and I think you sit at that time for 4 hours, and then they bring you down again. Um, mm,
You'd have to really know what you're doing with that and have doctors around and so forth. And yes, have to be out, definitely. But the theory is that it kills the infection.
it brings you up into a fever response. It's what your body does naturally.
Okay.
And if we can increase the temp a little bit in the body, replication rate of virus and bacteria come down. So if you were to have this therapy, you would want to know that you've got an active infection and not just you had an infection. It's treated. The infection caused such a cascade of cytokines, inflammation, drainage, blockage, whatever it might be, that now you are just stuck in the dysfunctional systems caused by the previous infection. You want to know you've still got an infection.
Did you cover that they actually test you beforehand?
They do. It's an extra $1,000, and they send it to. They don't send it to and they send it to their local path lab, and because it's so recognised, they're fantastic. My hesitation with all this overseas testing is that a lot of Australian patients have rickettsia as a co-infection, and I think Australia does the best rickettsia testing. We cover the most species here. The overseas labs do not cover the level; they just do rickettsia. Whereas in Australia at ARRL, we're actually covering a lot more species, there's 6, 7, 8 of them.
Yes.
And I think for an Australian patient, that could be good to know, but not really. The rickettsia response is the same antibiotics as borrelias do. Need that extra level of knowledge.
And a lot of times rickettsia, symptomatically is very, very
Looks
small.
exactly like
You
classic Lyme.
you could not determine the difference
You can't.
between it. And
Yeah.
yet still many people and many doctors don't even test for rickettsia here, which is been recognised in here. It's been known to be here since the late 1800s.
We're allowed to diagnose it, we're allowed to treat it. And I think rickettsia is one of the simplest things that we can ask our GPs for after a tick bite, because nobody's going to go in and say, maybe I've got Lyme after an Australian tick bite. That would be suicide. But if you go in and you say, I've got fever, rashes, headaches, numbness, tingling, I
Yeah,
just got bit by a tick, I want to check for rickettsia, can you write me a request for Australian reference, Rickettsia Reference Laboratory in Geelong, tick all tests?
yeah,
You're also going to get your Borrelia and your Bartonella and your Babesia checked, as well as your Ehrlichia and Anaplasma. And then your doctor's covered, because
that's
they
right.
just asked for a Medicare rebatable test from an Australian lab in a justified manner. And then you've got your data quickly at a half price because Medicare pays 50%. So I
Yeah,
think protect your good doctors if you've got one by asking for rickettsia, not Lyme.
yeah, it is. And the other one is, even if your doctor is a little bit doubtful to do that, you've got often infectious disease doctors within hospital systems in the main places. However, the issue is you might have to wait a long time for that, but they also can order those tests too. But if you can get your doctor to
They
do it,
don't. I don't know that I've seen a patient that's ever had success with an ID.
yeah, well, there is in Melbourne. We're a little bit lucky. We have got an ID department there that will, but the wait time is a couple of months. Can be a couple of months, which is too late. You need to get
Mm,
the same as if you've got overseas Lyme disease. You need to get it treated straight away. The more you get it treated straight away within the first month, for sure, the more likelihood you are to get over it and be
mm.
fully in remission. And that would be the best aim for us in Australia. Is again what you said is rickettsia, and if it's in North Queensland, you've got a higher chance of possibly Q fever from
Yeah.
ticks.
And scrub typhus, anaplasma as well. Yeah, the Ehrlichias now. We've got the Ehrlichia canis in the dog population.
And in Eastern Australia, got to look out for alpha gal, tick meat allergy, paralysis, and so forth from the saliva of the ticks here. So
And
something
that's
that
getting more recognition. That
it
is on
is.
the radar of mainstream medical professionals now and IDs. So
Yeah,
there's something there. But yeah, how do we treat an anaphylactic reaction or allergic reaction? Like once it's in, I think.
it is, and it's growing overseas tremendously. It wasn't, but now it is, like all in tick infections overseas. So because we're not doing that surveillance in Australia, we don't know, but we
Mm,
can only assume that it is also
mm.
growing here too as well.
Yeah. And it would have seemed to be based on the frequency that I'm observing it in patients to 7 years ago. So
So we're,
that's my clinical expectation too.
yeah. So we are at 10 past. So
Mm,
do you want to talk a little bit more about just briefly about tick infections and testing, or do
mm.
you want to hold that over perhaps for May, perhaps?
I want to do it now because we kind of just segued into it with
Yeah,
ARRL. I
good.
would just finish with St. Georg. They do apheresis there as well. They're doing that plasma apheresis. So you can get that in some of your other packages. So that's, or you can get it on its own
That's in
as well.
Germany.
So yeah, that's in Germany.
And
So
do you think that's because of the long COVID sort of things they might have introduced that recently?
possibly, I'm not sure when they put it in. I couldn't answer.
Okay.
But mm. um, tick-borne testing, if we've got a chronic mystery illness, the likelihood of finding infections in the blood, I think, is some of the reason that we don't get good answers out or good, strong positives out of the tick-borne testing. So we're asking some dumb questions. We're asking the immune system, has it seen a pathogen, particularly with Borrelia? And Borrelia is turning the immune system off, so it can't see any pathogens. It's changing your interleukin response so that you don't recognize it and make antibodies to it. So asking for antibody testing with a Borrelia infection is limited anyway. But I think we do have more and more testing around the world emerging that is more effective, that is more accurate, and that is looking at a broader range of species. And for an Australian infection, that's really useful because whilst I personally see a lot of my patients flag positive for Borrelia burgdorferi after an Australian test, we haven't found Borrelia burgdorferi in our ticks. So whatever our patients are testing for is so closely related, it's the close cousin that it's cross-reactive enough in a PCR test, which is fairly specific at a low cycle count. So we are getting getting answers on Borrelia burgdorferi that are useful clinically. But I think that we also need to be broadening the net to other Borrelia species and asking, is something that we have in Australia that we haven't named close enough to flag positive for Myomotai or Hemzai? And so when we expanding the net and asking more questions than just Lyme, just Borrelia burgdorferi, I think we're going to get a better chance of getting a good diagnosis for a patient that they can actually treat on. So because these infections aren't just swimming around in the bloodstream after an initial infection, we need to drive them back into the bloodstream to get measured. And the tests aren't cheap. The out of pocket is significant for most people. I want to get the most accurate data we can. And for that, I think a provocation is essential. And so either a 3-herb provocation for 3 weeks and then an infrared sauna on the day of the blood draw, or you can do this with antibiotics with your doctor if you have a good one. And if you do, let me know in Australia. I only get the antibiotic provocation done through US doctors. I've never had one done here. So I think for an Australian patient, using the 3-herb provocation first. So week 1, we're using a herb to provoke Borrelia, week 2, Babesia, and week 3, Bartonella. And then the day you finish that provocation, infrared sauna, blood draw, and then they're out and about. They've been driven out of the tissue. They've been driven out of the nervous system, and we can hope to catch them in a blood draw.
The other one is also lymphatic drainage massage can also do that as well.
Certainly a thing as well. Yeah, I wouldn't do just the drainage massage on its own without the herbs. I don't see the same accuracy, particularly in the antibody serology.
All right.
I'll see patients do antibody testing and come back negative, even though I know that if they've done a herbal provocation, they would have got a good yes on that.
And can you outline the kind of herbs that are generally used that a naturopath would use for this?
Yeah, so I've got them in my herb store. So you just go brianagunn.com, remedy store herbal provocation, and I post that kit out to you. I get them from around the world. They're not just herbs that we can get from our Australian suppliers. So the first week is teasel, and that drives Lyme out of tissue, Borrelia species out of tissue, back into the bloodstream. Second week is Artemisia annua, and then for Babesia, and the third week is Petunia for Bartonella. So it's not 100% specific to Bartonella, whereas the teasel is very specific to spirochetes and Borrelia species. Most people hear the word provocation and feel that it will be provoking symptoms and they'll be feeling worse. That's not necessarily true. Often when we are having an effective treatment, people are getting better. They're feeling like, oh, week 1, my headaches are less and I feel less nauseous. Interesting. Oh, week 2, I don't have fever to the same degree. So just use that opportunity of those 3 weeks of provocation to keep notes. And that way you can start knowing clinically, oh, probably the headaches and the nausea, possibly the Borrelia in me, possibly the fevers, the parasite. And then you can know we've got to treat these 2 things separately. There's 2 different driving organisms here. So you can use it to collect data as well to confirm what the blood tests then say.
Yeah. Okay. So taking a journal note of what's happening, what happens if people do get seriously a lot worse? Does it mean that there is either way a clinical sort of guide to sort of say, look, you most likely have, we can't prove it, but clinically from my experience, if you get a lot worse, could be the fact that you have
absolutely.
Or if you start feeling better, you could also have these infections too.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're only drop doses. They're 5 to 10 drops of each of these herbs 2 to 3 times a day. And there's a handout that comes with a kit if you buy it from me.
So you can start even one if you kind of do the 5 or 10 drops and you kind of get, well, I'm feeling really terrible. Maybe could you do a rest day and then go to 1 or 2 drops?
Yep,
and build up a little bit.
And we'll just kind of keep it at that 1 or 2 drops while you add in the other herbs. If you're really suffering on the dose, just pull it out. Okay, we got our clinical data. Hold it, and then just day or 2 before the blood test, go to the dose again, just so we can get the blood drawn.
I was reading online and also in 3 books, which I read a lot of, that people overseas are recommending that when to get your blood test also, without the thought of provocation, is when you feel your absolute worst, when you are maybe running a fever and everything, which is ironic because it might be hard to get down to the laboratory or to get your blood drawn and so forth as well. But they do say that when you're feeling your worst, that's when you should go and get tested, because that's more likely when they are active, more likely when they might be back in the blood as well. Because you're right, they do spinal taps, they do synovial fluids, they they look into tissue and so forth, and that's where they do find it. But quite often they don't
absolutely.
find it in the blood. And is it the blood's response that gives you the antibody response that the testing can pick up, and why antibody testing is not as accurate as it could be or should be because of the body's antibody response to it?
Well, antibodies are part of the white blood cells, and they are found in the blood. That's
In
where
the
we're
blood.
getting them from. Yeah.
And so with especially Borrelia, it tends to hide from it. But you
Or
mentioned
make
before
an
to get,
antibody response to it.
yeah, and as you said,
Or
when you,
we're asking very specifically, do you have an antibody response to Borrelia burgdorferi? And what you've got is actually his cousin. And
yeah,
so we don't have the correct blood test to ask
yeah,
whatever the cousin is because we didn't bother to name it in Australia. We
yeah.
just find them. Great, we've got another one.
Well, yeah, there is about 4 or 5 now in our ticks. They've been confirmed since 1965 or even earlier.
Yeah,
Um,
1962, Borrelia queenslandica.
yeah, but as yet, there hasn't been proven to be harm, and that's the next scientific, clinical, or not clinical, but scientific and
Well,
research
I mean,
stage.
Michelle Williams' PhD research from the 90s found the opposite of that, and that's why she's run out of academia. She found very clearly that the patients who had the infection that looked very much like Borrelia burgdorferi,
Yeah,
and the US specialists in Borrelia burgdorferi looked at these spirochetes under microscopes and said, looks exactly like Borrelia burgdorferi to me as well.
yeah, it
This is
does.
before PCR testing. And the
Yeah,
patient population, the symptoms correlated exactly to classic Lyme disease.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And that's
relapse.
what I see in my southern New South Wales to Harvey Bay in Queensland. There's a whole group of ticks that live in that region that present in my patients exactly like classic Lyme disease.
Yeah, which is why they call it Lyme-like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. I mean,
And the Borrelia in testing, yes, as a Borrelia burgdorferi antibody testing. It's
yeah.
so close. Whatever it is that we've got is so close in genetic makeup
Well,
and the way that it infects humans.
is it Borrelia? But Borrelia is Borrelia. You know, does it all? It responds fairly much the same. Although the European Borrelia is more brain related, whereas
Neurological.
is more arthritic related. But overseas, you've got the Southern Starry, which is another Borrelia,
Mm,
gives you a bullseye rash, gives you similar symptoms, but it's not a Lyme Borrelia.
mm,
And the
mm.
same as the Baggio roshinari in South America. Again, it's very much like a Lyme disease, but let's call it Bachinari
Yeah,
syndrome,
yeah,
how you pronounce it.
yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
but it
I
gives you
have
the same kind
observed
of
in patients that where the bite is changes what the symptoms are as well. So you get an ankle bite, you're going to get joint symptoms. You get a
interesting.
neck bite, you're going to get neurological symptoms.
Is that because its infection is closer to wherever the organs are?
I think that's just where they swim into first.
Yeah.
As they get out of the bloodstream, they're going to burrow into whatever tissue they like. And what do they like? They like collagen. They like connective tissue, so they burrow into joints to feed. And they like nerve cells. So they just go closest to where the food source is for them.
Okay. Coming,
And that's just my clinical observation.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess coming back to testing, in Australia, everybody should be looking at rickettsia as well. I mean, a lot of people are down this Lyme pathway, and I can certainly understand the reason why. But we do miss rickettsia. I mean, my infectious disease doctor, I was having a chat with him, and he said 25% of his ME/CFS patients who never considered ticks or tick bites at all, he found 25% of them tested positive for rickettsias in Australia. And I haven't got the follow-up from him. It'd be nice to get the follow-up, how many he actually treated, actually did improve their chronic fatigue syndrome because they were treated. But the good thing is they also test for all the other viruses as well, your mosquito viruses too. So they run the whole gamut. And maybe that's another issue as well, because you don't know what you've been for. More than 50% of people don't know they were actually bitten. That was my case. By running the whole gamut would be a nice ruling out process. Interesting though that the first test of rickettsia, if it comes back positive, they say you need to do another test.
Retest in 6
The
weeks.
first test, they declare it as a false positive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get turned away and they don't do that second follow-up test. The second follow-up test could be negative and therefore say it's negative. That was in my case. My third test, 3 years later, was positive again. Then they said, oh, well, you're definitely positive. But I had to wait in that thing 3 years.
Why don't we just believe the first test?
Well, they say it cross-reacts with other viruses and so forth. But the second test, again, coming back to when you should test is when you feel your sickest, because maybe
Mm.
the second test for me, I wasn't feeling my sickest.
Mm.
The third test I did, and they said, "Were you bitten in between?" I said, "No, I haven't even left Melbourne,"
Yeah.
so there's no chance of being bitten again. So that's how
Mm.
long it can be in your system. So you still can be infected, but you'll still test negative.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Has anybody got any questions from that before we wrap up? Because we've kept you a long time. You've got people to see today.
Mm.
Anybody got any questions? You can jump in, put it online. Treatment options in Australia.
Mm.
Yes, if you've got
Yeah.
rickettsia, you can talk to that.
Yeah. So there are, um, what can we do in Australia? We've got antibiotics in most states that are available. I don't think I've got a doc in the Northern Territory who would do anything. It's not very many in Queensland. One in South Australia, but we do in WA. We do in Victoria and New South
Yeah.
Wales. So there's antibiotic options.
If you
WA,
test positive
there's,
for rickettsia, definitely.
yeah, yep, yep. I mean, I think there's Borrelia docs in each of those states that will treat decently too. Um,
I think,
and Bartonella and Babesia, absolutely. So there are those options. There is naturopathic care, absolutely. And I don't think anybody should be taking antibiotics without naturopathic care. The damage that antibiotics do in the 2-3 years that you need to take them, 18 months plus, let's say, we need to keep your fungal levels down. We need to keep your gut healthy. We need to keep your immune system, your nervous system, your sleep, keep your detox organs. Antibiotics are killers. Lyme treatment is not about killing. Lyme treatment is about getting your body to work better. And that's where naturopathic solutions really shine. Um, Herbs support, nutrients optimize. Antibiotics do not do that, they just kill.
yeah,
So you want to wrap both of those two things together always for the maximum success. Um, we do have ozone, we do have hyperbaric, we do have IVs. You can do saunas. We don't have any 10 pass ozone, but you can get ozone IVs. Or in Sydney, you can get the blood washed with ozone twice and put back in. There is a lot that we can do. We've got things like Indiba, PMT, we've got some magnet therapies. There are alternative health clinics in each state that will be doing some of those things at least. And a lot of them you can do at home.
yeah. And most of it, sadly, though, is privately without any rebates and so forth. So it still will cost you a lot. But the sooner you can get on to any kinds of treatment, the better it is for you. And you're sort of hinting at the fact that it's not just going to be one thing. You can't just kill an infection and you'll be done, especially if you haven't picked it up early enough. Um, and also depending on how healthy you were to begin with as well. I
Yes.
mean, probably many people could do with a good detox or all of these other therapies, even though they think they're quite healthy as well. And once they've got
Mm.
some kind of assault on the body, then everything else becomes much more noticeable as well. I mean, your thyroid's affected, adrenals affected, everything else is affected, as you said, sleep, gut, the whole thing. So
Mm-hmm.
holistically, a naturopath would look at most of these things. And somebody who's also, like yourself, who's experienced in tick-borne infections and vector-borne infections and so forth, probably is much better suited than another naturopath who hasn't done that training. Would you say
Oh,
that?
absolutely. You would not go to anybody but a specialist for these diseases. They are too complex. There is no way a normal naturopath has anywhere near the level of training and experience to take you where you need to go in this stuff. They're going to be throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that
No.
something sticks. You need an absolute plan to get through this stuff. And one of the things that it occurred to me when I was in all of the overseas treatments, and this was confirmed at Neomed, she really thought to maximize the success, spend 3 months before you go with the naturopath.
No.
Get your drainage, get your sleep, get your gut, get your nutrients up, optimize your diet, start the process of killing or reducing harm from the infections. And also aftercare. None of these clinics did aftercare. St. Georg did, I think, 6 weeks or 2 weeks of Zoom calls from their patient advocate. And sent you away with that swag of very standard supplements.
No.
None of these treatments do aftercare. You need to come back and work with someone like me or Debrosia who's just left, somebody who's just also understanding Lyme and what your next steps are, because you will make a gain. You want to then keep it. You want to have spent that 40 or 50 or $60,000 and hold that level. You don't just want to slide back slowly.
Yeah.
And it's very, very rare that everybody's 100% well. There's still going to be things you need to work on. And even if you come out and you're like, wow, I'm 100% well of my tick-borne symptoms, you might realize I'm in menopause.
Right.
My fatigue and my hot flushes aren't just Babesia anymore.
Yeah.
What are the other things that are occurring in your health that you've been not able to see because you were sick with stuff more important when you get into the layers? And so I think even 12 weeks with a naturopath afterward to
Yeah.
implement what you've learned, keep you on herbs to keep the healing going, is going to maximize your outcome. And that's um, both Dr. Yuri and Susanna at Neomed said the same thing. They said, we need better aftercare for our
Yeah.
patients.
It sounds like something that could be promoted a lot more, and that people set themselves up like yourself, and people know about yourself and others
Mm,
like you that
mm,
can go, I'm planning to go overseas. Can you prepare me for that? And would you
absolutely.
assist me when I come home? That
Absolutely.
sounds like a much better program, because we are, uh, you know, we do come back, we go over there, we sort of prepare as much as we can, and then we come back and then we don't know what to do. And that
Yes.
has happened a lot. And maybe that people who come back and 30% who fail may not fail as much if we have that support from people in Australia. You may not get it from a doctor. Some doctors you might, functional medicine doctors, but perhaps people like yourself could set up almost like a little
Yeah, there will be a recording, Kate.
interactive sort of thing, and know who you are. If you're in different states, you need to see them face to face, but you work over Zoom, which is,
Mm.
since COVID, more people are used to doing that as well, of course.
Yeah, I moved to that direction after a bricks and mortar clinic for a couple of reasons. Um, but chronically ill patients, they don't have time to come and sit in my waiting room, maybe be exposed to the perfume of the person who sat there before, maybe be exposed to chemicals in traffic or driving their car is difficult. If we do it via Zoom, then you just rock up at the right time in your house, in your pajamas, you're in your safe place, and you don't have to commit extra spoons to get to an appointment, sit in a waiting room, interact with people, be exposed to more stuff. So I think it is safer for chronically ill people to have this availability.
It is. And again, if you build up a little team of people around you, like if you do have
Mm,
a local GP, even if
mm,
it's just a Medicare-based GP, they can see you if they need to look in your ears if you've got an ear infection, which is what I had,
mhm.
because you can't do that by Zoom. And then
Yeah,
certain things, you check your skin, whatever. So
absolutely.
having a little team of people around you is quite good. You might need to manage that team, but it can be done.
Absolutely. And it's collaborative care. And with somebody like me, this is the world I've been in for such a long time. I will guide you on who else you need in your team. I can see when you need an acupuncturist as well, or
Yeah,
psych support, or a doctor to just, can we just run a couple of works now? I want to see what your immune system's doing. Let's bulk bill that. Um, yeah, it's not just, there's no one person I think that can provide all the solutions. It is a collaborative approach because it's such a complex disease population.
yeah,
Um, and coming back to you mentioned before with rickettsia treatment, just people suffer when they do killing. I don't jump in with killing with any of my patients unless you're well enough to deal with corpses. Your drainage pathways are working, your detox pathways, your elimination pathways, your anti-inflammatory, your immune system can do, can turn off
yeah,
and resolve inflammation. The lymphatic system is working. There is no point killing with a chronic infection as your first option. You will get sick.
yeah.
And that'll put you off killing. That'll put you back in your healing. Start with support. Always start with drainage and support.
Yeah, that is a very, very good point, that a lot of people are moving that direction as well. You've got to become healthier first
Mhm, mhm,
before you can handle, as you said, the die-off, the Herx reactions that could happen.
mm.
And knowing that that could happen as well is a bit of a preparatory for you too. Because a lot of times when that happens, they go, oh my gosh, I'm going to stop. That's exactly what happened to me. My doctor had
Please don't.
no idea and just gave me the
Please
antibiotic.
don't. Let's just
And
reduce the dose, put in more support first, work on drainage, optimize nutrition. If you make yourself sick and then you get scared and you stop, you're not going to be better in 2 years' time. Whereas
no,
if we go slowly, 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 you're going to get somewhere that's a better place than where you are today.
yeah.
And don't push yourself to the place where you're poisoning yourself with the Herx. Keep it where you can feel it, but it's not
So
debilitating.
disabling for you. I mean, you're already sick. Why
That's
take
right. You can't
something
take more.
that you're going to be make yourself a lot sicker? But if you're prepared for that and you say, look, I shouldn't be this sick, then you can back it off.
Mm,
The process might take a little bit longer, but it's going to be safer. You're going to be able to handle it, and you're probably going to continue with it as well. I mean, again, 20 years unwell myself. It's only
mm,
through that experience that you come to that
absolutely.
Mm,
And I don't know that I've ever seen in patients who push themselves into a herx and fall off a cliff. It take me 3, 4, 5 months to get them back to their baseline. Whereas if we'd just gone slowly, 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 they would have been better
yeah,
than if they. And it's so tempting when you've been sick for a long time. If you start feeling even a little bit well, to go, great, I'll have more. I'll do more. I'll take 6 things. Please don't.
yeah, yeah,
Patients, that would be the wrong choice. For a well person, maybe that's okay. But if you're not a well person, you will get better faster by going slower.
yeah. And there's things we haven't addressed today, of course, which is a lot happens a lot is the SIRS mold issues, and you can have both.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
we need to come back,
Absolutely. Yep.
and sometime in May, I reckon,
Yep.
and talk again and build on what we've been discussing today. We better wrap that up. That's been an
Mm,
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been brilliant.
mm.
The comments have been, this has been great, and asked if it's been recorded, and yes, it has. So I'll be able to watch it again, take their own notes and so forth. But you've delivered such great information for us. That's terrific. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for everyone coming and everyone who's going to watch the replay as well.
Yeah, thank you. See
Okay.
everybody. Bye.
See ya.